Welcome to Acton Line, a product of the Acton Institute promoting a free and virtuous society. I'm Mark Townsend, producer. You can find additional resources in the show notes for this episode, as well as previous episodes of Acton Line at acton.org/podcasts. If you have a comment or an idea for a future episode, you can email us at podcast@acton.org. Acton Line is available to stream on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and acton.org.
Welcome. My name is Dan Huger, librarian and research associate at the Acton Institute, and today I'm joined by Father Robert Sirico, co-founder and president emeritus of the Acton Institute. Father Robert, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Buon Natale, as we say.
Yes. So this is kind of a special episode of Acton Line. We usually, follow not so much the liturgical calendar, but the scholarly calendar of publications, of things like that.
Sure.
But, a lot of people listen to podcasts even when they shouldn't. And this is going to come out on Christmas Eve, and we thought we would bring a little Christmas cheer to everyone should they tune in on Christmas. And I wanted to start out by just sort of asking you about, a lot of people, Christmas is a very special time. It's a very special time religiously for Christians,
yeah.
But it's also a very special time for Americans in general because the holiday is so much a part of our national calendar that
Yes.
even if we don't have religious convictions, we all have Christmas memories. We all have, ways we celebrate the Christmas season.
Cultural touch points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was, what are some of those early sort of childhood Christmas memories for you?
Well, I'm trying to think to the first Christmas. The first one that I can remember, I wanted a Superman suit. And this was like in the 1950s, so this was all the rage. And I got it. And I wish that I had kept it and the box.
Oh, yeah.
Because I could buy a house with it now, I imagine. But we had a small apartment and a tree and the lights and all of the tinsel that we throw on the tree. But I remember it being warm and very, of course, an Italian-American Christmas. We as many ethnics in this country, you have the American feast, the American food, and then you have the whole Italian feast, too. There's the lasagna and the antipasto and stuff. And the night before, this would be tonight, we would have the Feast of the Seven Fishes. Okay. So it was in the liturgical calendar, it was a day of fast. The day before you fast and then feast. And so you couldn't eat meat.
Yeah.
So what the Italians did was just develop this magnificent meal of 7 different kinds of fish. So we had all of these different kinds of fish on Christmas Eve. So those are some of the memories, but it really filled your senses. That's, I guess, what I'm saying, even especially in New York with the lights and the city and things like that.
Boyhood Michigan Christmas was different.
More rural.
More rural.
Yeah.
We would always, the beginning of the Christmas season was always going out and getting a tree.
Oh,
and, so we would go out as a whole family. We had actually a whole group of different families, colleagues of my father's from work and their families. And we would go out to a tree farm.
So a group of you?
Yeah, whole group. Whole big group.
And you cut down your own tree?
And we would cut down our own trees.
How exotic.
It is.
We just went to a parking lot on the corner where they were all bundled for us.
I still do it to this day.
Do
I
you?
go to
That
the same
sounds
Christmas
lovely.
tree farm. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah. At churches up in Grant.
Oh, that is great.
And we would all come back, and then we would make the most Midwestern chili imaginable with lots of sour cream and cheese.
And was this done how far in advance of Christmas?
Oh, it was always snowing, but that doesn't tell you much in Michigan because
it
it could be
doesn't.
Halloween
Right,
when that
yes.
happens. So it would always be in December, early December, sometime, and so we would have the tree in the house for a month or so. We'd stay there some days after Christmas, and then Dad would lug it out and put it on the curb.
How did you deal with Advent before Christmas? Because the different people do different things. We didn't put up the tree we put up the tree, but we didn't decorate it until into Advent. And then the tree stayed up in our home until Epiphany.
Yep. So growing up, my family wasn't very formally religious. So we had a very much.
I see.
So there
Okay.
were a couple exceptions to this, though. So we did always have what always came out, actually before the tree. The first sign of Christmas in the home was always the nativity.
Oh, the creche, yeah.
And this would go up.
Invented by St. Francis, by the way.
Yeah. And this is my first memories of Jesus and the whole story. And the other thing that was very religious was very Americanly Christmas religious. We would always watch Charlie Brown Christmas.
Oh yeah,
which of course has the recitation of the whole scene from the Gospel of St. Luke.
Yeah, that's beautifully done.
So we had those sorts of touch points, but nobody was very particular about when the tree and the decorations went up or
so
went
that
down.
wasn't attended. Yeah,
that was more just when the needles started falling off.
And the sad thing I think today is that if you ask most kids about the 12 days of Christmas, they think it's the 12 days that lead up to Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And they're getting gypped. Because you can have Christmas Day and all of that.
Yeah.
And then have 12 more days.
You get a whole 12. There's an old Saturday Night Live sketch. I think John Lovitz plays Hanukkah Harry. And it's about the Christians next door who are jealous that there are 8 days of Hanukkah. And then they learn some lesson that they shouldn't be jealous.
Having grown up in a situation like that, I had Jewish neighbors. This is going to drive our Jewish viewers a little crazy. But in New York, you could ask anybody. You had Jewish neighbors who had a Hanukkah bush.
Oh, yeah.
Because they wanted to have, the tree.
And the tree is a recent innovation.
Victorian.
Yeah.
Yeah. They lifted it from the Germans. And in fact, what popularized it, because I've just written an article for the Free Press, and so I did a little bit of research, and it was Queen Victoria and her husband who posed in their home in front of a tree. They took the German tradition. Yeah. And that sent it worldwide, and that's what became. And then, of course, in the States, the Coca-Cola Santa Claus and all of that amplified all that sense, that aesthetic sense of the season.
Thank you, Prince Albert, for bringing this to us.
And Charles Dickens. You can't.
This is one of my Christmas traditions. The local NPR station. I'm not sure if they still do this, but for years and years when I was growing up, they would play an audio reading of
the Christmas Carol, yes.
And it was usually on Christmas Eve. And I remember this because my mother used to throw these fabulous Christmas Eve parties. And I would always, late in the night, turn that on when things were winding down. Now, there's this great cultural role of Christmas that we've talked about. But this is also a touch point. This is the reason for the season, as they say, is Jesus Christ.
Right.
And this is a touch point for a lot of people, like me when I was a kid. This is the time when Jesus was really visible, was actually visible in the home.
Yes.
In the way that he wasn't other parts of the year necessarily. As somebody who, you're retired now, but you never really retire from the priesthood.
No, when somebody asked me that, what's it like being a retired priest? I said, a priest never retires. I retired as pastor, but not as priest, and I'm not much of a retired pastor either, because I still say Mass and hear confessions, and my work with the Acton Institute literally has increased rather than decreased, because I'm freer to do things, especially with my weekends.
Yeah. And this, I was talking to an older priest years ago, and he was filling in. This was, this was when I was in Hillsdale, and he was filling in for our local parish priest who was off, I think, visiting family.
Sure.
And we took him out to dinner after adoration service, and because you need to know someone to find out where the Italian restaurant in Hillsdale is.
Oh, is there one?
There is. There is.
I wasn't sure there was food in Hillsdale.
There is.
I thought you'd have to kind of bring it with you.
Yeah. There's a Wendy's on M99 and everything.
Oh, wow. Who knew?
But we took him there, and my friend asked him, have you ever thought about retiring? And the priest said, what do you think this is? Standard Oil? That always stuck with me.
But there's a sense in which our retirement benefits are the best of all, right?
Yeah. And you're in this unique position in pastoral ministry where you see, on Christmas, people show up, people who might not otherwise show up.
Yes.
And this is the one time you get them.
Yes.
How do you, with those folks that are curious, with this one time a year, it's in the forefront of their mind.
Yes.
And they think, I had a cousin who she used to always go. She was not particularly religious, but her tradition was always she and her dad, my uncle, would go to church on Christmas Eve, and that was the one time they made it a regular thing and a regular tradition. Yeah. And when you have people at that point where they're affected by the mood of the season and they're drawn to the church in some way, but they're not. They're visitors, and this is new to them. How would you tailor?
Well, I'll
Christmas
tell you
message
what,
to them.
What I have done for 35 years of my priesthood. Every year I start the homily off with the same basic message. I know that a lot of you are visiting. Maybe you're visiting families. Maybe you've just kind of shown up because it's Christmas and it's the thing to do. And whether you've been away a long time or a short time, I just want you to know, and I say it very seriously, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, we are so glad to have you because we're not quite ourselves when you're not here. Mm-hmm. And I want you to feel welcomed, and if there's anything we can do for you now or in the future, always feel free to contact me. I say that very earnestly because I mean it very earnestly. And it's remarkable how many people respond to that in a very warm and grateful way, because a lot of people, you go through the year and you've had a death in the family or you've been alienated from the church because of some ridiculous statement that's been said by somebody and things like that. And so I think to welcome people, as to the message, really in a way, Christmas is both the most difficult time to formulate a message, because what can you say to top the rhetorical excellence of Dickens, right? Mm-hmm. So the thing that makes it easy is that the incarnation is everything about our lives, all of the different fractures in our lives and the variance in our lives and the apparent contradictions in our lives, and the intimacy that God wants to have with us. Once I was asked by a group of nuns to celebrate Mass in their barn. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it was a functioning barn. Yeah. There were animals. Mm-hmm. And they had on the haystack, we set up the altar, and it was cold. Mm-hmm. And behind me were the various animals. And so I got up to preach. And just as I got up to preach, the cow let go some gas. Oh, no. And everyone was, they were both bemused by it, but they were shocked. What's Father going to say? And I said, this is the incarnation. This is what it was like on that first Christmas. Mm-hmm. That it's not the perfect, sanitized, positioned creche of art. It is the mess into which Jesus Christ came, and that mess is in our lives. Mm-hmm. He wants to enter the brokenness of our humanity to bring us to the wholeness of his love.
This is one of the things that I think about a lot. Now I go back to the Charlie Brown Christmas, where you have that beautiful recitation of that description of the scene. Charlie Brown is very frustrated throughout that movie with the sort of demands that the Christmas season can weigh on people.
Yes.
He has to put on this production, this show.
Right.
He has a sister who is crassly materialistic and asking Santa to send 10s and 20s and this sort of thing. And all of this thing is pulling him out of the season and is alienating him. And I think there's a time when the Christmas season, a lot of people come into it with expectations of family and togetherness. And sometimes those aren't realized because of the brokenness in families. And it can be a very lonely time for
No,
people.
I think it is one of the most nostalgic times of the year. It's a hearkening back to a memory, and it may not even be a particular memory, maybe just a mood. I remember when I was a kid on Christmas night, everything had settled down, everything. I don't know, nobody was really doing anything. How sad I felt, and I didn't know why. And I was so young, I didn't have much of a memory to be sad about anything in particular. And I think I'd like to think that it goes to the memory of humanity, of our alienation from God. And the joy of Christmas, which is the other emotion that people feel, even if sometimes it's forced, which can, by the way, exacerbate the sadness, the forced joy. But the joy of Christmas is that our lives have meaning and that there is a way out of this dilemma. There's a revelation to us of who we are in the incarnation.
There's also, in that nativity story, there's an interesting way that everybody responds in that story. The shepherds, of course, come to see. The wise men from the east come, and they come with gifts. And often people think of gifts as a burden or as something materialistic.
Materialism, yeah.
But there's also the gift giving itself is part of the story and part of the incarnation.
Yes, precisely.
How do we reconcile that? Because a lot of people have problems reconciling the sort of what they see as materialistic aspects of the season with the spiritual aspects of the season. But there's a way of spiritualizing those
but
gifts.
that's the whole thing. That's what the incarnation does. It brings together the material and the transcendent. And if you read in conjunction Genesis 1 with John 1. John 1, of course, gives it the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. But read Genesis 1, too. You see this delineated creation of the world in 7 days and how God brings it into being. The material can obscure the spiritual, in which case we become materialists. But there's a way in which there's a heresy of the other side, where the spiritual overwhelms the material and the material becomes irrelevant. And that's another heresy. It's called Gnosticism. And what the incarnation does is what it says in the Creed. He's God and man. He's consubstantial with the Father in his physicality. Jesus redeems the world because all of humanity is subsumed into his humanity to be redeemed. And one of the ancient fathers said, what is not subsumed is not redeemed.
So we've talked a little bit about the importance of Christ's humanity. We've talked, of course, about the importance of God coming to earth, his divinity. We've talked about them together. What about the work of Christ himself? We have this beautiful mystery that's presented to us. How do we introduce people through? Because this is the other thing about the Christmas story is the Christmas story gives us Christ in a very unique way as a child, which is to teach us a very particular lesson. But it's also just the beginning of Christ's story on earth and his redeeming work. And how do you bring that out in the context of a Christmas message? Or is it enough to just sit with the Christ child and reflect on that aspect of the incarnation?
Well, I think in this season, it is beautiful to reflect on the Christ child because we're seeing this innocence and this vulnerability, which is something we always have to keep in mind. But remember that what Christ does afterwards, whether it's the teaching of the elders or asking of the elders questions in the temple when he gets lost, or turning the water into wine at Cana, his first miracle, and then go on with the multiplication of the loaves and fishes or the healing of the sick and the raising of the dead and all the rest of his ministry right onto the cross. All of that is made possible by the incarnation. That is, he wouldn't be the carpenter in Bethlehem or Nazareth if he hadn't been born in Bethlehem.
As people are listening to this, maybe they're listening to it on Christmas Eve when it comes out. Maybe they're listening to it on Christmas Day. Maybe they're listening to it a week afterwards.
Sure.
And they're catching up on their podcasts after everything.
Which is still Christmas.
Which is still Christmas.
Everybody thinks
we
that.
Still have. There is still time on the Christmas clock.
That's right. Right to Epiphany, right to the presentation of the Lord in February.
Yeah. What advice would you give people to draw closer to God in this time? What are some things that they could do that maybe they're feeling that pressure of the holidays, maybe they're feeling some of that joy, but maybe they're feeling some of that loneliness that even you as a child felt in the evening. What's the proper response to that? How can they reach back out to God who desperately wants to meet them?
Well, the one thing is to keep in mind that you don't have to find God. God came to this earth to find you. And the other thing I think, and I think people will appreciate this, all of us, and I'm speaking to myself right now, is to just calm down, be quiet, turn off the phone, get off the screen, turn this off. To be quiet, to be meditative. And this is, of course, the right time to think about the Christ child, too. And maybe put on one of those rich theological hymns. O Holy Night, Silent Night, are beautiful meditations, quiet meditations, because as we kind of turn down the buzz around us, there's something that we can encounter in the silence. Now, maybe we're afraid to encounter it. Maybe it's uncomfortable. And maybe it takes a little while to get into, but I think a few deep breaths with a little bit of silence, you begin to appreciate the depth of the season beyond the tinsel.
Yeah. Father Robert, you have mentioned that you had a piece talking about some of these Victorian themes that we talked about coming out in the Free Press. And it's partially a meditation on that. It's partially a meditation on the Incarnation, but it's also partially a meditation on a poem by Jordan Manuel Hopkins.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you would do us the honor of a reading.
I'd very much like to. It's not a Christmas poem. What's interesting about this is it's the aesthetic of Christmas that the Victorians gave us, but not the theology of Christmas. And what Hopkins does in this poem is meditate on creation. And in meditating on creation, he evokes several tensions or feelings. His way of writing is called sprung rhythm. It was a tempo in his poetry, and you'll hear it if I can render it properly. He's not easy to read because of the complexity of his writing. But here's what's interesting about him. He was Victorian, but he did not. The Victorians didn't know him. They didn't know him as a poet. And it wasn't until about 50 years after his death, when his writings were published, that people began to realize what they had. And his poetry is not traditionally Victorian poetry, Shelley and Keats and Yeats and all of these people. This is very modern. And as I read it, let your mind kind of take in the images and the tempo of it and see if this isn't a kind of bubbling description of our world and the grandeur of God that shines in our world, which is an oblique reference to another poem that he wrote. But this one is called Pied Beauty by Jared Manley Hopkins. Glory be to God for dappled things, for skies of coupled color as a brinded cow, for rose molds all in stipple upon trout that swim, fresh fire-cold chestnut falls, finch's wings, landscape plotted and pierced, fold, fallow, and plow, and all trades their gear and tackle and trim. All things counter, original, spare, strange. Whatever is fickled, freckled, who knows how? With swift, slow, sweet, sour, dazzled, dim, he fathers forth whose beauty is past change. Praise him.
Father Robert, thank you for that. Thank you for being with us. And to everyone at home, turn this off.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Acton or hear more of this podcast, please visit acton.org/podcasts. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.